Hello, I am Tan Kee Chuan, Chief Quality Officer from the National University of Singapore, to the ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance, AUN-QA Assessor, Trainer, and member of the technical team. This presentation introduces the latest guide to AUN-QA assessment at program level. We are now into version 4.0. Worldwide, there are over 15 university ranking systems in use. Some are more recognized than others. For example, there is the Center for World University Rankings. The CWUR is a consulting organization that provides policy advice, strategic insights, and consulting services to governments and universities. They have the objective of improving educational and research outcomes. There is also the Shanghai-based Academic Ranking of World Universities that started in 2009. Many of us are familiar with the QS World Universities ranking that specialize in the analysis of many performance parameters in higher educational institutions worldwide. And there is the Times Higher Education World University Rankings that lists the world's best universities. Wherever there is ranking, there is also assessment. Indeed, the two go hand in hand. The Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, or ABET, is widely used in North America and also worldwide. European countries favor the assessment platforms set by NCAR or the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. Some assessment systems have worldwide recognition. Others are used within a geographic region. And yet others are country-based, which leads us to the topic of this discussion, the ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance System or Models of Assessment. The AUN-QA assessment models are the one and only ASEAN regional model accepted by ASEAN country universities. The AUN-QA assessment framework consists of two major components. One is for the assessment of individual academic programs. The other is for the assessment of entire universities. The very first trial program assessment took place at Burapha University, Thailand in May 2007. Since then, 700 academic programs have been assessed. This is no mean feat, given that AUN-QA assessments are strictly voluntary. The first institutional assessment took place in January 2017 at the Vietnam National University, Hanoi University of Science. Let's look at the latest developments of the revised AUN-QA model for program assessment. The foundation of an academic program is its expected learning outcomes. ELOs establish what a program's stakeholders want to see the students possess when they graduate. Following the crafting of the ELOs, the program builds its structure and content. What are the first to last year courses? What are the university level required courses? What are the program level required courses? And so on. These are matched to an educational philosophy and a set of teaching and learning approaches and methods to use in training the students. And then, how students are assessed must also be matched to the modes of teaching and learning. Together, these criteria 1 through 4 form the design-related criteria of the model. The design criteria are backed up by resources. Resources to implement the teaching. These are the academic staff and the support staff also. A university requires also a wide range of support services: course registration, ad drop, financial services, student care services, career services, housing, and so on. These services, which are mostly people-based, are accompanied by enabling hardware such as physical building, equipment, computer and internet connection, and the entire infrastructure of what a university is physically. The design of a program and its ensuing resources applied drive the output and outcomes. These are the number of students graduated, academic publications and other creative works, and also the extent to which employers are satisfied with the program's graduates. Together, the 8 criteria drive the achievements of the program. And in the spirit of improvement, this takes place against a backdrop of benchmarking and constantly revising and improving its curriculum, upgrading its staff, and so on. The AUN-QA model of program assessment started life with 18 criteria and over 100 requirements. Without going too much into history, suffice to say that the model has progressively become more efficient, there have been less overlap, and more focused on what is important in delivering an outcome-based education. Succeeding versions have also moved away from being more rule-based to being based more on principles. National quality assurance frameworks are mostly, although not wholly, run based on rules, such as the required staff-to-student ratio or the number of publications to produce. Rules are based on numerical indicators that are either satisfied or not satisfied, or complied with or not complied with. As mentioned, the AUN-QA model of assessment has succeedingly taken on more of a principles-based approach. Principles refer to broad guidelines, a system of belief, or a chain of reasoning. Principles do not connote the need for numerical targets to achieve. Generally, principles are able to take an organization further than rules can. Compare the set of rule versus principle issues in this slide. Whereas a rule-based approach is generally static and standardized, a principle-based approach is more continuous and is contextualized, or something that is assessment or evaluation-based versus one that is improvement-based. A rule-based educational system has a higher tendency to generate fear and suspicion on whether the rules have been followed or whether the numbers provided are accurate, whereas a principle-based educational system calls for mutual trust and respect among all parties concerned. The program is not told exactly what to do. It is not about the rules. Rather, there is a set of guidelines to follow. In addition to being principle-based, the AUN-QA model of assessment does not prescribe any rule or strict requirement. It used to in its previous versions, but not anymore. Areas of improvement are recommended. There are no mandates, there are no must-do. The entire model is contextualized to just academic programs in a university instead of being standardized across industries. The AUN-QA competency model starts with the practitioner level, and that includes many of you. You are here to be introduced to the AUN-QA assessment model version 4.0. Your aim may be to go for an assessment in the near future. Before the pandemic, it would be the AUN-QA Tier 1 training that many of you have attended. At the next level, there is the Tier 2 training. This training teaches one how to be an assessor. And many of you have also stepped up to this training. There are now over 110 well-trained serving AUN-QA assessors. Level 3 refers to a lead assessor who, in addition to working on an assessment, also has to manage one or more junior assessors in the team. This is because assessors minimally work in pairs. Here again, the AUN is most pleased that many staff from many ASEAN country universities have attained lead assessor status. After a number of years of being a lead assessor, the next step is really at the expert level, where an assessor's repertoire of knowledge and skills over many assessments in several faculties, science, social science, medicine, law, engineering, arts, and so on, puts the person at a very advanced and experienced level. That person becomes officially an AUN-QA expert. Things have gotten a bit more complicated in the past several years along the lines of there is program assessment and then there is institutional assessment, where more knowledge and skills are needed. Remember the earlier slide that showed the institutional assessment model of 25 criteria versus the program assessment model of just 8 criteria. There is also a chief assessor level that requires coordination and leadership skills in leading a whole team of assessors, not just assessor pairs. At the trainer level, the skills needed are even more. A trainer trains other assessors to do their job. There is also the design of the training courses. So the AUN-QA competency model has really been enlarged and expanded in recent years, especially since 2017 when we got into institutional assessment. Let's briefly introduce the main players of the assessment model, and that is the 8 criteria. Under each criterion are a number of requirements that need to be fulfilled. There are a total of 53 requirements, sufficient to fit into just one PowerPoint slide. Again, a far cry from the over 100 requirements of version 1.0. The expected learning outcomes need to focus on what are the eventual outcomes required by the students by the time they graduate. A backward design of the curriculum is used in that it all begins with what skills the employers want the graduates to possess. Backward design means to also first understand what society requires from the graduates. And this is especially so for public universities. What are the skills and knowledge needed for gainful employment? It is certainly not to be further trained for another 6 months before the newly hired can take on job responsibilities. The objectives, the vision and mission of the program need to be aligned with the objectives of the university. The requirements of the expected learning outcomes are that they need to be specific, not nebulous. They need to be measurable in order that the degree of success can be quantified. Are the ELOs achievable, or is the bar set too high, or perhaps too low? Are the learning outcomes relevant to meeting the needs of education in today's world of Education 4.0? And can the learning outcomes be achieved within the time limit prescribed, within the semester, year, or period of study as defined? All stakeholders, especially alumni and employers, need to be involved in setting the revised expected learning outcome. In fact, one would say their input is crucial. Most likely, an academic program uses a taxonomy to categorize the various expected learning outcomes. For example, if Benjamin Bloom's learning outcome taxonomy is used, there needs to be amounts of remembering, understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and also the creation of knowledge, where a student produces graduation thesis. It is wholly possible to use other learning taxonomies. For example, Fink's taxonomy of significant learning discusses how we can be better learners through improving the learning process itself, or Wiggins and McTeague's 6 facades of understanding, which includes a perspective component requiring learners to see an issue from multiple points of view. Biggs and Collins' structure of observed learning outcomes parallel Bloom's hierarchy. The structure is that learners begin with seeing matters as single concepts. This builds into multiple concepts, and then the relationship among the concepts is discerned. And eventually, there may be an abstract level where new concepts emerge. One new requirement for Criterion 1 is the need to show how the learning outcomes have been achieved by the students. Each course begins with students told what they can be expected to learn from taking it. At the end of the course, students provide feedback on a range of issues, including whether the lecturer has done a good job in conducting the course. The assumption is that if the lecturer has done a good job, then the student would mostly be able to achieve the course learning outcomes. For Criterion 2, the program needs to show timely curriculum reviews and input from alumni and employers, as previously mentioned. Nowadays, the dissemination of information about a program is no longer just on a hard copy brochure or on the program's webpage. The first thing applicants ask nowadays is, what is your Facebook page? What is your LinkedIn page? What is your Instagram page? The very important issue of alignment is another key focus of Criterion 2. The learning outcomes from each lesson need to be aligned to the learning outcome of the course, and the learning outcomes from the various courses need to be aligned to the higher level learning outcomes of the program. The learning outcomes of the program need to be aligned with the learning outcomes of the university, and so on. A word on pathways. Used to be that a degree program engages students to study a single, deep, and narrow discipline. Then came the requirement that, in addition, students need to also be well-versed in a broad range of discipline. Thus, the shorter horizontal line in addition to the long vertical line. Then, some programs went one up by introducing minors, the short vertical line in addition to the major discipline. Before long, there were double majors, 2 long vertical lines. Yet other pathways have been devised in more recent years. For example, inter- and cross-disciplinary programs. Such is the response to the needs of employers and industries that continually require ever wider and deeper skill sets from university graduates. Criterion 3 starts with the foundational requirement of having a strong university educational philosophy. To create solid grounding, to be upright citizens, to care for the environment, and to give back to society. The new assessment model will pay close attention to the use of novel or Education 4.0 teaching and learning methods. They include online learning, of course, and blended learning, mobile-based learning, the use of AI in learning, gamification, flipped classrooms, and so on. Equally at the forefront or what will achieve high assessment marks is the inclusion of skill sets for tomorrow's work. This includes the ability to think laterally, the ability to manage people, to have cognitive flexibility, to be able to negotiate, and to have emotional intelligence. Entrepreneurship has been added as a part requirement in version 4.0. This new skill set is fast becoming a norm in many universities. In fact, some universities specifically offer degrees in entrepreneurship. Parallel to assessing how novel teaching and learning methods are used is the inclusion also of novel assessment methods. We are all aware of the trend in reducing paper and pencil-based assessment in favor of more real-world and practical-based assessment. Importantly, a program has to show how well its teaching and learning activities are aligned to achieving its expected learning outcomes. It needs to be shown also that the assessment methods are aligned to what is taught, and they must be valid, reliable, flexible, and fair. The issue of importance for Criterion 5 academic staff are 1. Looking at the entire hire to retire life cycle, which often lasts for 30 or more years, to see how well planned this is, especially since a very long-term vision is required from planning today to reaping rewards only in 10 years' time. The promotion and tenure process is also scrutinized closely. How long does the promotion process take? 1 year? 2 years? The institution of training or conference attendance for academic staff is also important. What is the budget set aside for training? What measures are in place to encourage research and skills upgrade? On the matter of Criterion 6, student support services, there has not been much changes from version 3 to version 4. However, the emphasis has shifted in line with education being more focused on outcome-based learning. The repertoire of services and activities that move students out of their comfort zone and into wider circles. The need to better sample working life before one graduates. Generally, these are the student services that have taken on greater importance, and the emphasis on exposure and understanding the working world takes center stage. As new jobs are created, jobs that did not exist 5 years ago, the onus is on the university career services to keep up with changes in the employment landscape. This becomes increasingly important as we move into the world of Industry 4.0. Criterion 7, facilities and infrastructure. These are a mainstay of universities. This is probably the criterion easiest to assess and tied directly to funds available. Funds for teaching and research laboratories, for computer upgrade, funds to create that physical, social, psychological, and virtual spaces that students desire. These are the spaces that engender relationship building and create lasting memories for all of us as students. What do you remember about your student life? Do you remember the studying part? Or do you remember the part about making friends and having a good time? University life is experiential. It is about making friends that last a lifetime, more so than it is about academics. Criterion 8, output and outcomes, include traditional measures of performance. These are graduation rate, dropout rate, average time to graduate, stakeholder satisfaction, and others. Expect more emphasis on providing outcome measures as opposed to overt input or output indicators, which are easier to measure. The shift is also towards outcomes that take place at the point of graduation and outcome measures taken after students become gainfully employed. Logically, the most important outcome is eventual, and this takes place only after several months of employment. Benchmarking and improvement trending will continue to feature positively or to score points in an assessment. Criterion 8 comes full circle, where a program shows the extent to which its expected learning outcomes have been achieved. Criterion 1, the expected learning outcomes, measure achievement of the program ELO. Criterion 8, the results, measure the achievement of the detailed outcomes of the courses and the lessons. There is no change to the AUN-QA rating scale. There is no change also to the rating procedure. The assessor pair provide the rating inputs. This goes to the chief assessor, who may or may not moderate them after considering input from all programs in a particular assessment. As said repeatedly, expected learning outcomes are the foundation of an academic program. And equally important is the alignment or constructive alignment among the components of 1. What students are expected to learn. 2. What students actually learn. And 3. How do we know if students have in fact achieved the learning outcomes? This can be seen at both the micro and the macro levels of alignment. At the micro level in aligning curriculum design, each lesson is aligned to its course, and each course is aligned to the entire program. And there is alignment among the learning outcomes from the program and from the university. These make up the graduation requirements of the student. Alignment in teaching and learning means to use a learning taxonomy such that the various levels or various categories of learning outcomes are included in the program. This is similar for the alignment of assessment methods. To use a simple example, we do not test only for memory learning in examinations. There has to be testing also for application, analysis, and knowledge creation, and so on. At the macro or high level, we see alignment among 1. What is taught, 2. How it is taught, and 3. How it is assessed. And these need to be aligned to the eventual outcome, which are the needs of the employers and more broadly the needs of society. Because what goes around comes around, there needs to be a feedback loop with employers and society providing input that continually adjusts the ELOs and the teaching and assessment methods. This feedback loop is new for version 4.0. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a synopsis of version 4 of the Guide to AUN-QA Assessment at program level. If I may make 2 final points. First, the model, as the diagram shows, it looks formal. It looks serious, a no-nonsense model to be applied exactly. If you wish, consider this stylized, less formal, less serious, or casual representation of the same model. And finally, a pitch on one other AUN-QA activity. The AUN-QA has in its works an even more exciting development of revising its institutional assessment model. This effort will be larger. Remember, 25 criteria for institutional assessment compared to 8 criteria for program assessment. Revision of the institutional assessment model won't be completed anytime soon, but look out for information about it as we continue on our shared transformation journey. Thank you for your attention.